They told her never to go near the river at night. They said the spirits wept there, and whoever heard their cries, well, they never came back the same. But Nneka, she didn't believe in stories. Not until that one fateful night. In a quiet African village, nestled between tall, swaying palm trees and the constant, whispering rhythm of crickets, lived a young woman named Nneka. She was brave, she was beautiful, but she was stubborn as a wildfire. Her mother, Mama Ijeoma, would often look at her with worried eyes and say, "My daughter, when the moon is full, the river remembers. Please, don't go near it." But Nneka was tired of living in the shadow of old fears. She would just laugh it off. "Mama, those are just old tales meant to scare children into behaving." She didn't see the flicker of genuine fear in her mother's eyes, the memory of a pain she couldn't bring herself to share. To Nneka, it was just another rule, another tradition holding her back. One particularly humid evening, the air thick and heavy, a bitter argument erupted between them. Words, sharp and regrettable, were exchanged. Overwhelmed and angry, Nneka stormed out of their small hut, her vision blurred by tears. She didn't have a destination in mind, but her feet, as if guided by fate, carried her down the familiar path. Above her, the moon hung full and bright, a glowing white orb against the inky black sky. It seemed to pull her forward, illuminating the winding trail that led straight to the river. When she arrived, the water was unnervingly still, shimmering like a sheet of dark glass under the moonlight. It looked calm, almost inviting. She sank down onto the grassy bank, the argument with her mother replaying in her mind. Every harsh word she'd spoken echoed in the silence. "She just doesn't understand me," Nneka muttered to the empty night, her voice choked with a mix of anger and regret. And that's when she heard it. At first, it was so faint she thought it was the wind. A soft, distant sobbing. It sounded like a woman, lost in a sea of sorrow. She scanned the riverbank, her heart starting to beat a little faster. Nothing. Just the gentle ripples spreading across the water's surface. The crying grew louder, closer. It was a sound full of such profound sadness, so deeply human, that it sent a shiver down her spine. The old stories, her mother's warnings, they all came rushing back. But curiosity, that stubborn fire inside her, won out. Against her better judgment, she leaned closer to the water's edge, peering into the dark, reflective surface. And what she saw there stole the breath from her lungs. A woman's face stared back at her from beneath the surface. It wasn't her own reflection. This woman's eyes were pale as the moon itself, and her tears, they defied gravity, falling upward toward the surface instead of down. Nneka was frozen in a state of pure, primal fear. She tried to scramble backward, to get away, but a voice, a trembling whisper, seemed to emanate directly from the reflection. It echoed not in her ears, but in her mind. "You carry your mother's pain, and yet, you mock her tears." The words were laced with an ancient, chilling sorrow. Before she could even think to scream, a hand, impossibly cold and slick with river water, shot out from the glassy surface. It clamped around her ankle with inhuman strength and pulled her in. The world dissolved into a rush of cold, dark water. And then, everything went black. When Nneka's eyes fluttered open, she was lying on the riverbank, drenched and trembling uncontrollably. For a moment, she thought it was a nightmare, but then she looked at her reflection in a puddle beside her, and that's when the true horror began. Her reflection wasn't mirroring her, it was independent. When she gasped in shock, her reflection remained calm. When she started to cry, fat tears of terror rolling down her cheeks, the reflection in the water began to smile. A slow, creeping, malicious smile. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She scrambled to her feet and ran. She ran faster than she'd ever run in her life, back toward the village, back toward the safety of her mother. She burst into their hut, her clothes dripping, her voice a desperate croak. "Mama, Mama, help me." Mama Ijeoma turned, and the look that crossed her face was one of absolute horror. Her eyes widened, not just with fear, but with a terrible, dawning recognition. "My child," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You've touched the river spirit." You heard its cries. Nneka collapsed at her mother's feet, sobbing, begging for help, explaining the terrifying smile of her own reflection. Her mother didn't hesitate. She knelt down, pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, and began to sing. It was an old lullaby, the same one she used to sing when Nneka was a small child, scared of the dark. As Mama Ijeoma sang, her voice filled with a lifetime of love and sorrow, the air in the hut grew thick and heavy. The very ground beneath them seemed to tremble softly. Tears rolled down both their faces, mingling together. Nneka looked past her mother's shoulder and saw it. In a bowl of water on the table, her reflection was visible, but it wasn't smiling anymore. It was weeping, its face contorted in what looked like remorse. Holding her daughter close, Mama Ijeoma finally confessed the truth she had guarded for so long. "I warned you because I too once disobeyed," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I was young and stubborn, just like you. The river, it took your father from me, and tonight, it came for you. The lullaby, the shared tears, the mother's sacrifice of her deepest secret, it was an offering, a plea to the ancient spirit." As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the trembling stopped. The heavy feeling in the air lifted. Exhausted, but feeling a strange sense of peace, Nneka walked back to the river. One last time, she cautiously peered into the water. This time, her reflection was her own again. It moved when she moved, and in its eyes, she saw not a haunting smile, but a deep, newfound understanding. The curse was broken, but as she looked back at her mother, who seemed to have aged a decade overnight, Nneka understood the devastating cost. The river had been appeased, but her mother's heart had already paid the price long ago. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed this tale, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the unknown. See you next time.